people who need them. We can't do it in an open format, we can't do it on television or radio, because our message is too destabilizing. We have significant opponents, people who have access to limitless reserves of finance, very aggressive legal teams, and where necessary, wetware to the people that we're playing against. The playing field is not level, so we do what we do to get around that. Now, in the last half century, our public health has gone from bad to terrible. This is a whole range of different diseases which we have seen increasing in frequency and which we have seen emerging in younger and younger groups of patients. These diseases are of very different kinds. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, allergies, autoimmune diseases, structural diseases, all of them are increasing. And this tells us that the way in which we live today, the environment that we live in, what we eat, has arrived at a very toxic point. It is harming us in many, many different ways. And the pharmaceutical remedy, the medical orthodox approach, is to treat the symptoms of disease with drugs which are very potent, very specific, expensive, very toxic. Our approach is different and is based not on the works of Louis Pasteur, but on Claude Bernard, the father of physiology. It's a very different approach to health. It's all about, instead of trying to shoot you with magic bullets, what we try to do is to provide your body with what it needs to heal itself. But it's difficult, because this is the food universe that we have to deal with. In the urbanized, metropolitan OECD nations, we eat a lot of processed foods, and this is a diet that will kill you. It will make you sick and it will kill you, because it contains the wrong ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s, which creates chronic inflammation. It has been stripped of polyphenols, which also makes you more vulnerable to chronic inflammation. It has been stripped of prebiotic fibers, makes you more at risk of chronic inflammation. It's full of compounds called ages and ales, which are produced when food is processed at high temperatures, higher than you would use in the kitchen. These compounds also cause chronic inflammation. And another group of compounds that have been removed, which damages your immune system and indirectly also causes chronic inflammation. Finally, too much sodium, not enough potassium and magnesium, although here in Finland you are better off than in many other countries. This is a recipe for ill health and premature death. It causes chronic inflammation, and as we now know, chronic inflammation is a key driver of most, if not all, of the chronic degenerative diseases. I'll single out the omega-3s and the polyphenols. What this graph shows you is that for most of recorded history, as far as we know, our diet contained approximately equal amounts of 6s and 3s, and then starting in about 1900, our intake of omega-6s from plant oils began to increase because they had been stabilized by technological methods of making them stable, and they were cheap, and they were added to all kinds of processed foods. So our ratio began to change from approximately 1-to-1 to a European average of 15-to-1, American average of 25-to-1. That causes chronic inflammation. Polyphenols, they've been taken from our diet as well. I don't have time to go into all the details, but our intake of polyphenols has fallen by approximately 90%. These two sets of compounds between them, the fact that they have been so altered in our diet has left us extremely vulnerable to chronic degenerative disease, because it triggers this series of mechanisms. I think this is self-explanatory, but just in case it's a little complex for some of you, here's a simpler version. It's called the inflammasome. The inflammasome is a series of structures, enzymes, messenger substances inside the cell that drives chronic inflammation. And you can divide it into two halves. The top half is where the 6s, the omega-6s and the omega-3s play a role. If you have too many omega-6s and not enough omega-3s, this creates messenger substances which cause edema, the accumulation of fluid, and it attracts certain types of immune cells. But it does more than that. This edema inside the cell leads to the rupture of intracellular structures called lysosomes, and they burst open one by one, and they release enzymes called matrix metalloproteases. That's the second half of the inflammasome, and this is what causes tissue damage. This is what destroys your cartilage, your bones, your nerves, your arteries. This is where diet causes inflammation, causes tissue damage, causes illness and death. It's all been pretty much worked out. So the way to stop being unhealthy, the way to start being healthy, to being well and or to being well again, is first of all, find out what your 6-to-3 ratio is. There is a wealth of scientific literature which shows how important this is. We have a balanced test, self-test, very easy to use. You take one spot of blood, put it onto a litmus paper, send it to an independent laboratory, and within 7 to 10 days, you can go online with your personal code and find your own ratio. It contains the omega-3s and the polyphenols, and that was the first product that Zinzino launched. Now, it stops chronic inflammation, but we can't say that legally. It used to be legal, but then the laws changed to say chronic inflammation is a disease. It's not, it's something that leads to disease. But by calling it a disease, the pharmaceutical industry protected themselves, because now only the pharmaceutical industry with drugs can cure chronic inflammation. Except the drugs they do have are too toxic, they cannot be used. And they're very ineffective, so I don't recommend that. All we can say is what the regulators will allow us to say. We are stifled. We can agree with the EFSA claims, which are very moderate. They don't mean very much, but that is all legally we can say. That stops chronic inflammation. So it stops your body destroying itself. But you have another problem. Because malnutrition is now so common, most people do not have in their diets the building blocks and the cofactors they need to repair the tissue that was damaged by the chronic inflammation. So this is where the Zinzino's second product comes in. It cures that condition of dysnutrition. Dysnutrition, make no doubt about it, combined with chronic inflammation, is the leading cause of early death all around the world. Poor diet, malnutrition, wrong 6-3 balance, not enough polyphenols, causes chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation makes you sick. So what do? You need a whole range of vitamins, minerals, carotenoids, xanthophylls, fatty acids, polyphenols, methanogens, cyanogenic derivatives. You need many, many different compounds, which you would find if you ate enough of all the right kinds of foods. But if you were to put that into a pill, it would be the size of a golf ball. And if you were to eat it as food, it would be at least 3,000 calories a day. We've measured this at Oxford, and most people don't want to eat 3,000 calories a day because we are so physically inactive compared to the way we used to be. So you can't eat 3,000 calories, you can't eat a single pill the size of a golf ball, so instead we've taken all of this and put it into 4 different tablets. This is Extender, and by adding this to your modern urban diet, it improves your nutrient profile to the level of that of a person who lives in a blue zone. The blue zones are places like Campo de Melle in Italy, or the Kuna Islands, where people eat a very different diet. They're physically active, they have a diet which is more dense in nutrients, less in empty calories, and they have far better health than we do. So this is something that you take to restore your nutritional profile. It also combines beta-glucans and cyanogens, which work to improve the ability of your immune system to fight off infection and to stop having the symptoms of allergy. What those compounds look like, and this is what is present in Extend. It looks a little bit like an ordinary vitamin and mineral tablet, and that's what the foundation is. It's an ordinary vitamin and mineral tablet with all of the things you'd expect. A little bit extensive, we've got vitamin K2 in there, which is very important, very different from vitamin K1. Very important both for your skeleton and to prevent calcification of soft tissue. Then on more foundations, just the usual things. Then we started to get creative. On the ground floor, we've got 8 different forms of vitamin E, 4 tocopherols, 4 tocotrienols. Most products contain the alpha tocopherol, which is one of 8. Very important to have them all. They all work in different ways, protect you in different ways. Also on the ground floor, beta-carotene, which everybody knows, but then also alpha-carotene, which has very different effects. Zeaxanthin and lutein, which are associated with the health of the eye. Lycopene, very interesting and important compound derived from, amongst other fruits, tomatoes, coenzyme Q10. And then moving on to the first floor, Wellmune. This is an extraordinarily well-tested beta-glucan which improves immune function and has been shown in a number of clinical trials to be extremely effective in raising your resistance to infection, preventing and stopping allergy, and is also being used in an increasing number of cancer trials with very, very positive results. I'm not allowed to tell you any more than that. You can go online to the medical databases and find out for yourself. And then on the floor above that, we have a very wide range of polyphenols, highly important compounds. You need a lot of different polyphenols, including water-soluble and lipid polyphenols, so they go to different parts of the body, different tissue compartments. It's a kind of umbrella. All these panels fit together and offer you comprehensive protection. And for the final act, apple seed, which has now been replaced by broccoli extract, which contains a compound that's rather like rhodonite. And if you don't know what rhodonite is, its other name is cyanide, which actually is an essential micronutrient, which you didn't know. But the immune system depends on this to actually function and protect you against infections. Too much, not a good idea. Not enough, also a bad idea. You need to get it just right. This is the Goldilocks phenomenon, and we are in the Goldilocks zone. This is exactly what the body needs, but you can't overdose. The levels are very, very low. Even if you were to swallow an entire package of Extend, I'm afraid you will still live. What will that do for you? Well, we don't know what it does for humans exactly because the study would take too long. But when you give this to mice, this is the master study done in Canada at one of my favorite university campuses. Mice given supplements very like ours, in fact I think not as advanced as ours. Their lifespan increased by 11%, which means 8 more years in human terms. They learned twice as fast as the controls, which did not have the supplements, and as they get older, they did not show any signs of dementia or reduced cognitive ability. Then we had mice which were genetically modified. They represented something more like us, in fact. They had various biochemical abnormalities, which we have because of the terrible diet that we eat. And in that group, they had this same broad-spectrum supplement, like Extend, that extended their lives by the equivalent of 20 years. The equivalent. I will not and I cannot claim that it will extend your lives by 20 years. What happens to a mouse does not necessarily happen to a man, but it is a pointer. From what I've seen, we are in a position now to provide you with nutritional programs which will slow the aging process and improve both your health and your life expectancy. Stage 4, get a better body. It's all to do with vanity, but there's a health issue here too. If you have too much adipose tissue, that creates chronic inflammatory stress too. So that's not a particularly good idea. And for that, we have a low-calorie meal replacement. These are the best documented of all ways of losing weight. And this is a particularly advanced formulation. First of all, its glycemic load is so low that it cannot even be measured. So it has no effect on insulin, no more than eating a green salad, which means that you don't have hyperinsulinemia, blood sugar falling, and feeling hungry again. So this stops you from feeling hungry for actually quite a long time. It also contains very high quality protein, which acts on receptors at the end of the small bowel, which also make you feel less hungry. And finally, it contains prebiotic fibers. And the prebiotic fibers are designed to feed not you, but your microbiome, the good bacteria that live in the gut. And the fibers break down to butyric, propionic, acetic acids, and those too reduce your feelings of hunger. Not everybody reacts the same. Some people don't feel hungry for 2-3 hours after eating this. I actually can't use this because after I've used it, I don't want to eat for the rest of the day and I don't want to lose weight, so it's not for me. Some people are more sensitive than others. If you want to achieve weight loss, you can use it to replace 2 meals. If you want to just maintain a healthy weight but feed the microbiome, replace 1 meal for muscle building because of the high quality protein, add it to your meals plus exercise. Best to take it in the evening. Now, for those people who are more interested in the microbiome, or as we increasingly refer to it, the holobiome, because the microbiome and your own genetic makeup really are completely coordinated and work very closely together, this is the holobiome. There is this fiber blend, taking a range of different prebiotic fibers from different food sources, and we've combined them. And the reason for combining them is that you need to have fermentation and the growth of healthy bacteria right throughout the colon. If you use FOS, which a lot of people do, FOS is a short chain, and so it ferments very, very quickly as soon as it enters the large bowel, but then it burns out. There's none left, And the good microbes then have to look for something else to eat, and they start producing compounds which are not good for you at all. So the phos that we use is just used as a kind of fuse to light the toilet paper. In the combination, we also have inulin, which is a longer, slower prebiotic fiber, which continues the prebiotic effect, changing the microbiome from negative to positive throughout the transverse colon. We then have 1,3,1,4 beta-glucans, which are slower again and resistant starch, and in this way we change the microbial population of the entire large bowel. You cannot really do this with probiotics. I heard that someone else was talking about this, but in fact probiotics are not very effective. One reason why EFSA has refused to give them any claim whatsoever. They don't survive. The gut is a very hostile environment for them, and as soon as you stop taking them, they're gone. You can only achieve very small proportional changes. If you want to change the whole microbiome, you need prebiotic fibers. You're sending in supplies to the good bacteria in your gut that have already learned how to live there and are trying to hold on. They're fighting a losing fight. By giving them supplies, they survive, they multiply, they grow, and they kill off the bad bacteria. This is the way to achieve systemic and significant microbiomal change. Moving on to vanity. This is a Victorian picture. You can tell from the sentimentality. And this is a product we've recently introduced. It's the Zinzino Skin Serum. And it is designed to protect your skin and allow it to rejuvenate. How does it work? It protects your extracellular matrix. This is a three-dimensional mesh of microfibers, including collagen, but also elastin, laminectin, proteoglycans, many other molecules, which is why collagen drinks and other products don't work. You need much more than that. The matrix itself is destroyed by ultraviolet radiation, by oxidative stress, by glycation if you have poor blood glucose control. If you have chronic inflammation, you lose it. If you have malnutrition, you can't build enough of it back, so over time it gets thinner, and as it gets thinner, the skin becomes more fragile, less elastic, weaker, more prone to infection. In other words, it ages. So what we have is an approach that uses an inside-outside approach. It builds on balance and extend, and it slows the rate of breakdown of the matrix. It increases the body's ability to make it, and so over time, the amount of the matrix, the numbers of microfibers in the skin increase, and the skin becomes thicker, stronger, more elastic, it holds more hydration, and the aging process is, in every sense, reversed. Oh, it also improves the immunity of the skin because one of the other active compounds that we've put in there. We know that people want to see effects fast, and so here are some of the products, compounds in there which have a short-lasting effect, an instant effect. You know about microbeads? Okay, microbeads, the plastic ones have been banned because after you've used them, they wash down the sink and into the ocean, they're eaten by krill, and they damage the food chain. Working with some Australian scientists, I've developed a microbead which is biodegradable. It's made from agarose, which comes from seaweed. So when you wash it out, it goes back to the sea and is made into more seaweed. That'll be in the next generation of product. Our products are constantly being updated. These are the actives that are really doing the heavy work, and they stop chronic inflammation, they protect you against ultraviolet radiation, they stabilize lysosomes and stop the release of the enzymes which would otherwise destroy the matrix. So this slows down the destructive side, and then the copper peptides and the beta-glucans together, they instruct the fibroblasts to make more matrix. Copper peptides are well known, many companies use them. To that we added the beta-glucans which act indirectly on the fibroblasts via the skin's immune cells, called Langerhans cells. The skin believes, mistakenly, that there has been an injury, that yeast has gotten into the tissue, and that the repair mechanisms must be activated. So this is a way of improving skin repair and regeneration even more effectively than using the copper peptides on their own. Finally, beta-carotene. Beta-carotene doesn't really protect the skin, but it will, at very low concentrations, give you a slight golden tone. And the reason for that is human vanity. Why do we like suntanned skin? Well, the evolutionary biologists say that if you saw someone found 10,000 years ago with a darker skin, a golden skin, it was probably because they were consuming a healthier diet, more fruits and more vegetables, and more carotenoids, and they would be more likely to be a successful mate. So we are programmed to be attracted to golden skin, and this will make your skin golden and make you irresistible to members of the opposite sex, or the same sex, if that is the way your interests lie. We have done one in-house clinical trial that will be followed by an external study. And here what we did, we treated a group of patients for 60 days, either with the serum, Balance Oil and Extend, the serum itself. And in group 1, this is the blue trace, well, the red is the control. And you can see that over 60 days, the amount of matrix shrinks and goes back, it sort of waxes and wanes, there's no net change. In the group that was given serum on its own, you can see that's the blue trace. There was a steady increase over the 60 days. But in the group that had Balance Oil, Extend and serum, so now you're working on the skin from the outside and from the inside, there was an increase in elasticity of a little bit over 30% in 60 days. And this is really, really significant. It puts us really at the head of all the current pharmaconutritional cosmeceutical products. Now, as if that wasn't enough. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's a wrinkle at the beginning, and then it's a computerized photograph, obviously, at the end of 60 days. Or under light microscopy, it goes from that, and it goes to this. And if you add the microbeads, the wrinkles almost disappear. The latest addition to the portfolio is Viva, and that is designed to treat a very different range of conditions. If you ask people, how are you? Ask them, how are you? And they'll say, fine. People don't like to talk about depression and anxiety and stress. It's one of those conditions that many people are silent about, they don't seek help about. But according to the World Health Organization, depression and anxiety are the leading causes of ill health worldwide. So here are some American data. I'll show you some European data in a minute. The overall incidence amongst US adolescents is about 1 in 8, 1 in 9. You see here that females are twice as likely to have a depressive episode, and this is a major depressive episode, than boys. If you add in moderate and minor depressions, you can take these figures and multiply them by 2 or 3-fold. You can see in the second group of columns by age that the incidence increases with age. In the third group of columns, it really is not ethnic specific. It affects everyone. Globally, we know of 322 million who are known to have depressive illness. That is, diagnosed depressive illness. But there are 2 factors that really should give us pause for thought. The first is that the numbers of people presenting with depressive illness are increasing very rapidly. A 20% increase in the last 10 years. But the real figures are far, far higher because many, perhaps the majority of people with depression, if you take the whole spectrum of depressive illnesses, are not even diagnosed. And if you add in stress and anxiety, well, they're almost universal. This is a very common set of problems, and of course they increase the risk of many diseases, because if you're depressed or stressed, it affects your endocrine system in a way that makes you more vulnerable to chronic inflammation. Increases the risk of so many other problems. So what do you do if you are foolish enough to go to your doctor? Well, they'll give you drugs, mostly. And we use antidepressants and anxiolytics, but there are enormous problems associated with these. The antidepressants are very slow to work. Typically, you'll start seeing significant improvements by about week 3 or maybe week 4. They're not very effective. If you look at the companies' funded studies, the antidepressants look quite good. If you look at the studies done by independent scientists who are not paid by the drug companies, they don't look very good at all. The changes are minimal. They're quite toxic. People who are on SSRIs and then try to stop, well, first of all, it can induce chronic vomiting in some people, but the problem is withdrawal. Once you've been on those things for quite a long time, withdrawal can be a difficult and painful process. And then this phenomenon of going postal. It takes a long time for them to have any effect on your mood, but they do, in some cases, improve energy levels in the first few weeks, during which time you are at increased risk of aggression and autoaggression. And it's called going postal because some of the massacres that have been carried out in the United States, where you could buy an AK-15 over the counter, were committed by people who were on antidepressants and had taken them for a relatively short period of time, and who then went out and committed unspeakable acts. These drugs are also too damned unproductive and dangerous to give to children. Then the anxiolytics. What about the anxiolytics? Well, the problem with those is they're addictive. Valium, the benzodiazepines, came out of the 60s. Many of the people who were prescribed benzodiazepines then are still addicted to them today. They are more difficult to come off than heroin. The latest generation are somewhat less so, but they're still habit-forming. Symptoms of tolerance and severe problems with withdrawal are characteristic of this drug family. These are not ideal drugs, not effective, not life-affirming. I don't like to work with them. So let's look elsewhere. This is a natural product. It's called saffron. They're the stamens of a flower called Crocus sativa. The Arab physician Avicenna wrote about this in the 10th and 11th centuries in his book. He talks about using this to treat the symptoms of conditions we would nowadays call depression and anxiety. Persia is now Iran. And over the last 5 to 6 years, a group of Iranian physicians who knew their history conducted a series of clinical trials with saffron and found that it was extremely effective. There's about 14 clinical trials. Saffron is at least as effective as the antidepressant drugs, including the SSRIs, and it is less toxic. It does not cause withdrawal symptoms. It can be used on its own or together with antidepressants. Again, go to PubMed, which is the database that we use to store scientific information, and you can see for yourself the details of these trials, which I cannot tell you about because it is against the law for me to do that. I can at least tell you where to look for the real data. We have a product called Viva, which contains a standardized saffron extract. It is the highest quality and most effectively standardized saffron extract that exists today. And to that we have added 7 key micronutrients. Are they really key? No, they're not. EFSA won't allow us to say that saffron helps with depression or low mood, because EFSA are a bunch of bureaucrats who serve the pharmaceutical industry, not you. But they have made some claims possible for a range of vitamins and minerals, and so, very cynically, we added those vitamins and minerals to Viva so we could make the claims. That's all there is to it. When the law is against you, you use the law against itself. The EFSA claims allow us to say, because we have the right amounts of these vitamins and minerals in there, which, as I say, aren't doing anything, but they allow us to say, Viva supports normal functioning of the central nervous system, normal psychological function, normal cognitive function, normal mental performance, and it reduces tiredness and fatigue. And it does, but it's not the vitamins and minerals that are doing that, it is the saffron. The evidence is very clear on that. Here's a few of the clinical trials. I could show you 3 more slides just like this. I don't want to waste your time, but there is a strong evidence base. Now those trials are a problem because they talk about depression, which is a clinical condition, and we cannot use a natural product to treat a clinical disease. So I just finished a study with a very good group of Australian and Italian scientists on people with low mood states. Severe depression, moderate, mild, low mood states. That is not yet a disease, although the American Health Association wants to turn it into one. But it is not a disease, and we found that the saffron extract in Viva was extremely effective in improving people's mood, reducing their anxiety, helping them to sleep more effectively. It has a fantastic safety profile. You cannot really overdose on this unless you work very, very hard at it, which means you can use it long term, you can use it for the rest of your life if you want, if you need to. You can use it prophylactically. If you think you're going to experience a situation which will be stressful or depressing, you can take it beforehand. And it can be used in children. We know this because in Iran, it has routinely been used in children. In fact, it's been used by women during pregnancy because they thought that by taking this, their children would have lighter skins. It does not have that effect, but it does not harm the children either. This is the product, and this is what Zinzino is all about. Everything that we do is protected. We have an exclusivity on that saffron extract. Everything is tested. We have an enormously powerful evidence base to support everything that we do. And everything that we do is effective. I can guarantee you that. I have to be able to stand up and defend myself in front of my peers at Oxford University. I would be ashamed to do that without the evidence we have behind us. What we have here is a group of products which are in many ways more powerful, more profoundly curative than anything you will get from the pharmacy. So go out and help. If you have friends or family who have the kinds of health problems that would be responsive to these products, this is something you can introduce to them. Say, try this, it will do no harm. It may do a lot of good. I know that many of you have experienced the benefits for yourselves. Be well. Make a good business. Thank you.
Kiitos Sammapo Pinska.